Hello everybody, I hope you guys are having a beautiful night or day, whatever it is for you. I just wanted to take a little bit of time to show some of the migration patterns based on the current archaeological information that we have and based on what a lot of historians are pointing out. This is a map of Africa and Asiatic countries in the Middle East and Europe and Australia and different places, showing the migration patterns. So you would have people coming up through Ethiopia and out of Egypt through those little straits, getting towards Mesopotamia and other places that is known as the birthplace of civilization. So now what I want to do is I wanted to take you guys through a little bit of a walkthrough. Did the Africans migrate out of Africa to get to Samaria? Google says yes. The Sumerians are believed to have been one of the first urban societies in ancient Mesopotamia, and they likely migrated from regions in Africa to settle in the fertile lands of the Tigris and Euphrates. The migration is known to have occurred about 4500 BC. So what you're looking at is basically people that would have probably been leaving a deserted area, more desert area. I'm seeing a lot of articles and different writings talk about how Africa, their climate would have changed up, which would have led them to go towards the river type areas. Now I want to talk about the language of Ge'ez. I believe this is how it's pronounced. I want to talk about this for a minute because you don't hear a lot about this. Or the classical Ethiopic is one of the ancient world's major literary languages. With 2 millennia of history in the Horn of Africa and Arabia, the language appears in many ancient inscriptions and in Jewish and Christian writings, even shaping the language of the Quran and early Muslim religious texts. So this would have been one of the precursors of the Aramaic and Arabic languages, and Hebrew actually. How old is this language? Answer and explanation. The Ge'ez language is believed by scholars to be circa 5,000 years old, which means if this language is already in circulation, I know circa and circulation are two different words, but if it's already in circulation that long, that means it could have possibly been older or taken longer to manufacture, making it the oldest of all languages. Considered the father language, the language is still spoken by southern Semitic peoples. It was a Semitic language, like the Ethiopian or Eritrean peoples, right? What language did Jews speak before Hebrew, the created Hebrew? From about the 6th century BCE until the Middle Ages, many Jews spoke Aramaic. A lot of times you hear people saying Jesus spoke Aramaic, John the Baptist and all the prophets spoke Aramaic. And what you're looking at is in that predominant region during the time, the Grecians set up a major empire, the Greek Empire, that was headed by Alexander the Third, I believe, or Alexander the Great. What he did was, according to history, he wasn't really oppressive and or violent like a lot of dictators. According to history, he had a new economic system set up where he had his own coins and stuff, and also he spread a lot of culture and Hellenized the world. I don't know if any of you know what Hellenism is, but you can research that stuff on your own. It was kind of like a Greek culture. What they did was they spread Greek culture throughout many different places, and they were like democracies. So a lot of these different city-states, think of it like the United States, but these United Greek states basically set up a coined Greek language. So during the times of like the Palestinian conflict with the Romans were in charge, but a lot of people were still using a Greek and or Aramaic language. They had the Torah in Greek and they had it in Aramaic, I believe, at the time. And a lot of the New Testament was written, actually, I believe the New Testament was written in Greek, if I am correct. So Aramaic would have been the language of the Jews before the revision of the Hebrew. Now, I'm saying all this for a reason. There's a certain content creator that I just found named Dan McClellan, I believe his name is, and I really like his videos a lot because he's explaining basically a lot of where these different texts came from a scholarly perspective. And he is also, what he is doing is he is explaining the language in the Hebrew from his point or perspective, what a lot of scholars are coming up with. He is a scholar in terms of learning the language and understanding what the people at the time would have been doing. So, Aramaic was the common language of Judea in the 1st century AD. The villages of Nazareth, Capernaum, Galilee, where Jesus spent most of his time, were Aramaic-speaking communities. I do not have any evidence that Jesus existed. A lot of people have their own things in life. I've been doing a lot of history and research, and the only person that I can actually find is John the Baptist. His name was Yehohanan or Yochanan the Immerser or the Dipper. He was a prominent figure in Jewish society. I'm going to say Palestinian or regional society. All types of men used to come visit him and listen to his gospel, from what I know. So, where does this current Hebrew come from? And after I'm done with this, I'm going to flip the video over and kind of give you guys an example of what's going on. So this guy, Eliezer ben Yehuda, like I said, I'm not digging too deep into history. I'm giving you the basics. He is regarded as the reviver of the Hebrew language. He was the first to raise the concept of reviving Hebrew in like the 1800s, to publish articles in newspapers on the topic. So even if you go back to biblical times, those people were speaking Aramaic or Arabic, whatever. I'm sorry, that was very disrespectful and ignorant. They were speaking Aramaic at the time and Greek. Latin would come a little bit later once Rome would expand a little bit more, but you're looking at Aramaic and Greek. The problem I have with this current Hebrew language, when I flip the video, I'll explain further, is that they only had consonants, if I'm correct. I believe they only had consonants, and so all the vowels were put into place, I believe, based on Aramaic, Arabic, and Yiddish. Now, even if you look into this Ben Yehuda guy, similar to English, Hebrew vowels are composed of 5 basic sounds, but the original Hebrew alphabet consisted of only consonants. But the letters also were used to indicate vowels, known as matres. I don't know that, so I'm not going to pretend to pronounce it. It has 22 letters, but none of them are vowels, right? So even if you look at where the word Israel comes from, if I'm correct, a historian or an archaeologist was looking into some Egyptian texts, or the Merneptah stele, and what he found was a word called Isirar, Isirar. And he esteemed the word Isirar to mean Israel, the people without a king. So once again, that's another probability. He's assuming something meant something based on his information. So basically, a Yiddish man or a Russian man, from his understanding of his language, recreated Hebrew using Arabic also. So, if you type in what is Isirar, you'll see it pops up, Israel. But that's based on a man's understanding of what he read in Egyptian text. And I could get into that for days. Even hieroglyphics were recreated. A lot of these languages were recreated after the fact, using the current language that the creator or the new person translating the language based on their So if I was to recreate Hebrew from my understanding, I'd be doing it from an English perspective because I speak English. So he did it from a Yiddish perspective based on comparing the text to like Greek texts, and I believe it was a Greek king or monarchy. Their name was surrounded by a banner. Now, when you guys see me make these videos, I am in no way trying to be propagandist. I'm not trying to sway people I'm trying to figure out history to the best of my understanding and knowledge with the information that I have. So what you're looking at is a long line of recreating languages and stories. Even a lot of these stories in the Bible originally were Mesopotamian, Assyrian, and Babylonian, and Egyptian stories that were recreated over and over. The earliest understanding we have of even Hebrew, from my knowledge, is from the recreation of Greek in the 9th century AD and in the recreation of Hebrew from this Yiddish man's perspective, or this Russian man's perspective. So I'm going to go into that now. Eliza ben Yehuda was a Russian Jewish linguist, lexicographer, and a journalist, right? So he's Russian who spoke Yiddish. His native language was Yiddish. He attended a Jewish elementary school where he studied Hebrew and Bible from the age of 3, and was customary among Jews in Eastern Europe. So either of Slavic, Germanic, ultimately, or, some form of European descent among the Jews in Eastern Europe. By the age of 12, he had read large portions of the Torah. So, you guys, I've said this before, a lot of these religions were basically people's understanding of the world at the time and their culture. And a lot of basically the Bible, what you're even reading, is a long line of different religious cultures at the time mashed together like mashed potatoes and gravy. So like the people of the Babylonian time and the Assyrian time and the Egyptian time all had different ideologies, and you're looking at different random groups of people breaking away from random oppressive empires using religious texts to their understanding and knowledge, and or to manipulate people for their will. Like if you look into the Revelation, I believe a lot of that is like Greek, just like the New Testament. And I believe it's a Greek translation of maybe Arabic people or Aramaic people, what they believed at the time, Palestinian Jews, if you will. So all in all, I believe a lot of this stuff is just cultures taking over other cultures time and time again, and then using it for their need at the time. So like Abraham would have been different from Jacob, and Israel would have been different from, and none of this would have been their language at the time. We're recreating these languages, and I'm going to turn it around in a second and show you why simple words like eat, leet, yeet, and skeet can be recreated to mean anything if you're not careful. So I'm saying all that to say this. I'm not saying anybody is wrong, although all men could be wrong because it's recreated stories. But what I'm saying is it's best for a person to use religion to better themselves as a person, so to speak. Maybe use it to higher their enlightenment, to become less animalistic, so to speak, less murderous, less violent, less racist, less slave inclined and dictatorial. You know what I mean? Because if I go off the Bible, I could rationalize slavery or a lot of these other dark practices. And what you guys are doing is taking a bunch of different men's beliefs at different times, and you're mixing them all together and making a monotheistic God. Because monotheism wasn't a thing back in the day. I'm just being honest with you. You're taking a bunch of random cultures and gods and turning it into a one God. And then you're mixing time periods and imaginations and fantasies and prophecies and turning it into one world religion, universal. Like, I'll give you an example. Do you know the Vatican is built on top of a necropolis, which is an Egyptian burial site or a burial city, which has to do with Anubis? Just one aspect of how one god can be carried over, and you guys could be worshiping Egyptian gods and not even know it. Okay, so I've talked about this before. So I hope you guys have a good day and enjoy yourselves. And the point of anything is just come together and become humans. We're all humans. Love each other and try to understand each other.